On today's show, Western Conference contenders or pretenders. Did the Minnesota Timberwolves do enough to stay competitive at the top of the West and remain legitimate title contenders? It's all coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Look, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, but right now, we have something a little bit different for you. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then, with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. FanDuel is the spot. You want to check it out. You want to get in on the action too. So not only can you capitalize on this NFL Sunday Ticket offer, but you can also take a look at all the different odds available to you over at FanDuel.com. We're talking about who the favorites are in the Western Conference, who the real contenders are in the Western Conference this upcoming season. You can take a look at the outright betting favorites to win the West this next season. OKC at plus 300, the Mavericks at plus 480 to make it out of the West again, right there with them. The Denver Nuggets also at plus 480, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves at plus 500 to be your Western Conference champion. So for all those odds and so much more, and to take advantage of this incredible offer, head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Joining us now is the host of Locked On Wolves, Ben Beecken, who you can track down wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Wolves, here for Western Conference contenders or pretenders. Ben, let's start right there, man. Why should the Wolves be considered legitimate contenders this upcoming NBA season?
Yeah, I mean, we can start with them going to the conference finals last year. They were, of course, #1 in the West for most of the season before OKC jumped up, and they were past that. They ended up being the 3rd seed in the playoffs. But yeah, I mean, it's 7 of the top 8 guys in the rotation are coming back. So the only one who's gone is Kyle Anderson. He signed with Golden State. So the Wolves are going to backfill his minutes with some combination of a couple of rookies, Rob Dillingham, who they traded up to get with the 8th pick in the draft, and TJ Shannon from Illinois, and then they also have Joe Ingles. And so that combination of guys is kind of going to fill those 8 and 9 spots in the rotation, those 3 together. But everything else is the same starting lineup. And Anthony Edwards is a year older. He should be better. He is more experienced. He has the Olympics experience under his belt. We saw coming out of the FIBA World Cup last summer, that kind of was a springboard for him. And this is obviously a bigger deal. He wins a gold. He gets to go play with, Steph and KD and LeBron and Steve Kerr and everybody. So there's nothing but optimism around this team, returning so much of the team and building off of what the conference finals was, the conference finals appearance last year. And it really kind of the feeling around the team, and Ant said as much too publicly, like really, they just kind of ran out of gas. They didn't realize what it took to get as far as they did. Nobody on that team had played that far ever in their career besides Rudy Gobert and Mike Conley. And so playing deep into the conference finals was pretty unexpected, I think, last year. And there's no reason this team can't just build on that and be a little bit better this year.
Running out of gas is definitely an element to consider there, absolutely, for a team that had never made it that deep in the postseason. A big part of it, though, and this is, around the NBA landscape, right? Matchups are a huge factor. And at least, from my perspective, it looked like this was a Timberwolves team that was perfectly equipped to deal with the Nuggets and to really be able to throw multiple bodies at Nikola Jokic. We spoke about this during the NBA playoff run and all that. But then when they matched up with the Mavericks, it felt like they were ill-equipped to deal with that Dallas Mavericks team, especially trying to slow down the tandem of Luka and Kyrie. So if I ask you, why should T-Wolves fans feel differently about a potential rematch, say, with the Dallas Mavericks if these two teams do meet back up in the conference finals again?
That's a great question. I mean, it's Luka presents such a unique challenge that I don't know that there's any, I don't know that there's very many individual players that we would say are best equipped. Or I don't know who you would say is best equipped to guard Luka Doncic one-on-one. And it's funny because the Wolves have waves of perimeter defenders. I mean, from Ant to Jade McDaniels, who was second team all defense. I mean, Ant got votes. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a strong perimeter defender, and obviously Rudy Gobert, the defensive player of the year. But Luka's bigger than some of the other guards that the Wolves shut down. I mean, they used Karl-Anthony Towns to guard Kevin Durant in the first round of the playoffs, and it worked great. And then Karl-Anthony Towns guarded Nikola Jokic in the second round, and nobody talks about Cat's defense. In fact, a lot of people before last year would have said it was a detriment. So it was funny in a bad way because they figured it out all the way up until they got to the Dallas series. And I think looking back at it, and I mean, I said this in real time, I thought the way they were trying to guard Luka, in drop coverage, they just didn't do a very good job with it. They weren't tight enough. And they tried to switch too often. And there was the Luka hitting the game winner over Rudy. I think it was game 2. And so everybody wanted to cook Rudy for that. And it's like, well, how many centers in the league, I don't care who you are going to stay in front of Luka? So there were some of those schematic things that I think the coaching staff kind of messed up. And obviously Chris Finch was hurt too. I think that's easy to forget about. And so that undoubtedly affected the Wolves on some level. Not that he wasn't part of the preparation, but I think they would just do, I don't know what exactly, but I think they would guard Luka a little bit differently. I think they would switch less often. They would try, and they added TJ Shannon, who I mentioned, who's a big physical defender on the wing. And so, adding a little bit more size. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Jaden McDaniels are both a little bit slender to guard Luka. So adding some more, I guess girth to their wing defenders should help as well. And Joe Ingles, not a great one-on-one defender, but a little more size in terms of rotational defenders. So yeah, I think it's some of those tweaks and some of the schematic changes if they do run into the Mavs again. And it's funny because leading into last year, I thought the Wolves matched up okay with them because they have an answer for Kyrie. They have so many of these perimeter defenders that are solid, but Luka just kind of went supernova there in the playoffs, and the Wolves didn't figure it out. So, yeah, some roster tweaks and then hopefully some schematic changes when they do face off against Dallas. But that's certainly going to be interesting when they play them in the regular season for the first time.
You mentioned his name there a moment ago. Rob Dillingham is one of the guys to potentially kind of, eat up some of the minutes to replace Kyle Anderson, the loss of Slow-Mo. What is your expectation for, kind of Dillingham's role this season, right? Because it's tough to bring in a rookie, especially with a team that has, such lofty aspirations as the Wolves, and be able to kind of toe that line between, getting him developmental minutes, right? Letting him kind of, have the bumps and bruises associated with being a rookie, but also trying to get the best out of him and teach him how to play winning basketball at the same time.
Yeah, it's a little bit like, go back a year, the Denver Nuggets tried it with Julian Strother and Zeke Naji and some of these guys who they were giving, I forget who the third guy was, but giving rotation minutes for a team that had just won the title in that case, but they let some guys walk in free agency, and here's how we have to do it. The Wolves are really only doing that with the one rotation spot, at least in the top 8 of the rotation. But that's exactly what they're doing. Now, of course, Rob Dillingham's a lottery pick. They traded up to get him, and it was kind of twofold there. So he's going to be in the rotation this year. They needed more bench scoring. They needed more creation off the bench. They also needed a backup point guard. And then the other thing is they need a point guard of the future. Mike Conley's got 2 years left on his extension. He could opt out and he could retire after this year because he's going to be like 38. So they need an answer for the future at the point guard spot, and for a team that's capped out and could be over the second apron and wants to avoid paying a repeater tax, like this is the most cost-effective way to find that future point guard who's hopefully going to succeed Mike Conley. But you're right. He's got to produce this year. This is a team that went to the conference finals. They need somebody off the bench to give them some punch. Now, obviously, Naz Reid won the Sixth Man of the Year this year, but they don't have another backup point guard on the roster. Daishen Nix is a two-way player, as you know, covering the Rockets. I mean, like he's not going to play rotation minutes for this team. That's not the plan.
I don't want to talk about Daishen Nix. I just don't understand it. I don't know what's going on, and it's a lot of Daishen Nix.
I can't not play that soundbite when Daishen Nix's name comes up, man.
I need that soundbite. I need to play it on my show all the time because when they re-signed him, like I was also shocked. He's a bench vibes guy. Like that's what he is. So he's your emergency third point guard. I mean, they had injuries last year and he only played rotation minutes in one game all season on a two-way contract. So, yeah, I mean, like Dillingham is the guy. Like he's going to have to score off the bench. He's going to run the second unit. And he's going to have some bumps and bruises early in the season. He's also undersized. We know he's 164 pounds or whatever he is. That wear and tear of the NBA season could catch up to him too. So they're putting a lot of eggs in that basket. Of course, Joe Ingles, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, those guys can both initiate off the bench too a little bit, but they need Dillingham to score some. And he's going to get every opportunity early in the season to do just that.
Now, look, the team to beat in the NBA is the Boston Celtics. They were a juggernaut this past season, won the title, all that jazz. We're focused on the Western Conference here. Obviously, Mavs edged out the Timberwolves, made it to the finals. So when you start taking a look at kind of the state of the Western Conference, I'm going to ask you to power rank these 4 teams, Ben. Nuggets, Mavs, Wolves, and Thunder. So power rank those 4. Go.
Yeah, I'd go Thunder, Wolves. Thunder, Wolves. I'd still go Nuggets, Mavs. I know the Mavs went to the finals, but I'd go Thunder, Wolves, Nuggets, Mavs. I think Jokic is still the best player on the planet, and I know that their offseason wasn't great. People are down on him. I get it. They're going to be right there. And I think the Thunder, they were the 1 seed. They had arguably the best offseason of anybody in the NBA. I actually like how the Wolves match up with OKC, but I do think that it's fair to say OKC's the team to beat in the Western Conference. We could argue about Dallas and their roster, and they catch lightning in a bottle a little bit last year, like they did a couple of years ago when they went to the conference finals 3 years ago. There's some of that, obviously Klay Thompson, but they also lost some pieces, and the defense may not be as good. So I think it's really close. I think Wolves and Thunder in some order are the top 2, and I'm fine with putting OKC 1. And then I think Dallas and Denver are 2 and 3 or 3 and 4. I would put Denver slightly ahead of Dallas.
How far will the Wolves go this next season? Will the Mavericks be able to make Ben pay for his ranking of putting them in last place on the power rankings here at the tail end of August? You're going to have this covered for all of that and so much more over at Locked On Wolves. Ben, thanks for stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Thanks for having me.